All right, so here's the deal. Something interesting just went down with the team, and it might actually tell us way more about their real plans than what they've been saying publicly. At first glance, it looks like just another move, nothing crazy. But when you really think about it, it raises a lot of questions about the future and who they actually trust moving forward. One question that has been generating a lot of buzz online is what Rodgers' future holds. Some have speculated about his departure, especially with the changes happening within the team. But is this really possible? Or is it just meaningless speculation? Let's analyze the facts. But first, tell me, do you think Rodgers should stay with the team? Or is his time over and he should leave? I want to know your honest opinion. And click the like button so I can keep you well informed. The Pittsburgh Steelers made one of the most intriguing moves of their recent draft strategy on Friday night, selecting Drew Aller out of Penn State in the third round. And this decision is already sending a clear message about the direction of the quarterback room, whether fans want to fully accept it yet or not. What stands out immediately is that this is not just a simple depth addition. This is a move loaded with implications depending on what happens with Aaron Rodgers and his uncertain future. If Rodgers does return, then the reality is that one of the current quarterbacks becomes expendable. And despite all the public confidence the organization has shown in names like Mason Rudolph and Will Howard, this selection suggests that belief may not be as strong internally as it has been presented externally. If Rodgers is in the building, the expectation is that he owns the job completely, week in and week out, making it clear that whoever stays behind him will be in a developmental or backup role. And that is where Aller fits into this picture. He is not seen as an immediate threat to a veteran like Rodgers, and that is intentional. The organization is being careful not to create any perception that this rookie pick is meant to challenge a future Hall of Fame quarterback. Instead, the messaging coming from inside the team has been very controlled, almost tiptoeing around the Rodgers situation, ensuring there is no added pressure or distraction tied to the rookie's arrival. But if Rodgers does not return, then the entire dynamic shifts dramatically. Suddenly, Rudolph becomes the likely starter, Howard slots in as the backup, and Aller becomes the long-term project. And make no mistake, Aller is a project. Evaluators inside the league see a quarterback with physical tools that are undeniably appealing. He has size, he has arm strength, and he has experience playing in big games at Penn State. However, there are also clear areas that need refinement. His mechanics require adjustment, his development has been uneven, and he comes from an offensive system that did not necessarily maximize his growth or prepare him fully for the next level. This is where coaching becomes critical, and the presence of Mike McCarthy plays a major role in this entire conversation. McCarthy has a long history with quarterbacks, and there is a belief that he can help mold a player like Aller into a more polished pocket passer over time. The Steelers clearly see something in Aller that they believe can be developed, something worth investing in, even if it takes patience. This is not about immediate returns. This is about building a potential future option at the most important position on the field. At the same time, the shadow of Rodgers looms over everything. There is still no definitive answer about whether he will play, and that uncertainty is shaping every decision the team is making. There is a strong expectation that he will return, but the fact that there is still ambiguity at this stage is surprising. Some around the situation believe it could be tied to his desire to avoid the off-season grind, while others think it is simply part of his process. Either way, the Steelers are preparing for both outcomes, and drafting Aller is a clear example of that dual-track strategy. What adds another layer of intrigue is the history between Rodgers and McCarthy. Their past relationship has been well documented, including reports of tension during their time together. While there have been efforts over the years to smooth over those issues, questions remain about how that dynamic would function if they were reunited. Would it be a nostalgic final chapter, or would old frustrations resurface? That uncertainty only adds to the complexity of the situation and makes the Steelers' quarterback decision even more fascinating to watch unfold. From the outside, it might look like the Steelers are simply adding depth, but internally, this feels like a calculated move that reflects both caution and ambition. They are protecting themselves against the possibility of Rodgers not returning, while also quietly investing in a young quarterback they believe they can develop. It is a balancing act, and one that could define the direction of the franchise over the next few years. And when you look at the bigger picture, this is not just about one player or one season. This is about how the Steelers are positioning themselves for the future while still trying to remain competitive in the present. Aller represents potential, Rodgers represents experience, and the tension between those two timelines is what makes this story so compelling right now. So, as this situation continues to evolve, and as we wait for a final answer from Rodgers, the question becomes unavoidable for every Steelers fan watching this unfold. What do you think this move really says about the team's confidence in their current quarterbacks and their plan for the future? And this is where the situation gets even more layered, because when you look beyond the surface of this decision, you start to realize that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not just reacting to uncertainty. They are quietly reshaping the identity of their quarterback room in a way that could have long-term consequences. The selection of Drew Aller is not happening in isolation. It is directly tied to how the organization evaluates what they already have and what they may lose, depending on the decision of Aaron Rodgers. Because if Rodgers does walk back into that locker room, everything changes immediately. The offense becomes his, the system bends to his preferences, and every other quarterback falls into line behind him. That includes Mason Rudolph, who suddenly goes from a potential starter to a player fighting to justify his place on the roster, and Will Howard, who would likely be pushed into a secondary developmental role. In that scenario, Aller becomes the long-term investment, the player who sits, learns, and gets molded behind a veteran presence without any pressure to perform immediately. But what makes this even more fascinating is that internally, there are signs that this move is not just about Rodgers' insurance, it is also about a deeper evaluation of Rudolph and Howard themselves. The public messaging has been supportive, consistent, and confident. But actions like this suggest that the Steelers are not fully convinced that either quarterback represents the future of the franchise. Drafting Aller in the third round is not something you do if you are completely satisfied with your current options. It is something you do when you believe there is a ceiling that has already been identified, and you need to start building beyond it. And then there is the developmental timeline, which is crucial to understanding why Aller specifically was the choice. This is a quarterback who is widely viewed as raw, someone who has the physical tools but needs refinement in multiple areas. His mechanics, his decision-making, and even the structure he came from at Penn State all point to a player who was not fully polished coming into the league. But that is exactly why the Steelers may have been drawn to him. They are not looking for a finished product. They are looking for someone they can shape from the ground up. This is where Mike McCarthy becomes central to the entire plan. His track record with quarterbacks suggests that he values control, structure, and development. And Aller fits that mold as a long-term project. The idea of taking a player with a strong arm, good size, and experience in high-pressure games, and then refining him into a consistent pocket passer is something that aligns with how McCarthy has approached the position throughout his career. It is not about what Aller is today. It is about what he could become in 2 or 3 years if everything goes right. At the same time, the unresolved dynamic with Rodgers continues to hover over everything. There is still a strong belief that he will play, but the lack of a definitive commitment at this stage raises questions that cannot be ignored. And beyond just whether he plays, there is also the question of how he would fit back into this environment. especially considering his past history with McCarthy. Their relationship has been complicated, and while time has passed, those past tensions are still part of the story. If Rodgers returns, it could create a scenario where the Steelers are balancing immediate competitiveness with long-term development, trying to win now while quietly preparing for the future. But if he does not, then this entire plan accelerates, and the focus shifts much more quickly to what comes next. Rudolph would likely take the reins in the short term, Howard would provide depth, and Aller would begin his journey as the potential future of the franchise, learning, developing, and slowly being prepared for a larger role. And that is what makes this moment so critical. This is not just a draft pick. This is a signal that the Steelers are thinking ahead, that they are not willing to be caught unprepared, and that they are already laying the groundwork for what comes after the current uncertainty at quarterback. It is a calculated move, one that reflects both caution and ambition, and one that could end up being remembered as a turning point depending on how the next chapter unfolds. Because in the end, everything comes back to that central question that still has not been answered. If Rodgers steps onto the field, this becomes a story about managing egos, expectations, and timelines. If he does not, it becomes a story about transition, development, and the search for a new identity under center. Either way, the decision to bring in Drew Aller ensures that the Steelers are not standing still. They are moving forward, even if the path is not fully clear yet. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and click on the video that's on your screen right now, because all the latest updates and inside analysis about the Steelers you will only find here, first and fast.